Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're going to get started soon. Just going to allow for a few more attendees to join. In the meantime, I'll be putting in my information in the chat box. My name is Perla Lopez. I am the Broadband Program Manager with the Arizona Commerce Authority. Thank you, everybody, so much for your patience. We will be getting started here shortly.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking your time and joining our second webinar for Leagues of Cities. My name is Sandy Bomik, State Broadband Director here at Arizona Commerce Authority. And again, I would like to thank you all for your time. And we are on our second part of the webinar today, local government webinar. In the first part, we talked about broadband infrastructure, broadband infrastructure and finance, how the financing part or investment are the deciding factor that what kind of broadband infrastructure, fiber, wireless, or satellite is appropriate for a particular community, and other broadband related technical aspect. In this webinar, we'll be discussing the $1 billion which is coming ahead of us, and how we will be distributing that money. And state of Arizona is going through a planning process. What would be our approach? What's the timeline, etc., etc. So without further delay, let's start. So we are hoping that we will go through this presentation. It should not take long. Please feel free to post any question in the chat, but we'll start answering those questions after the presentation is done. We would like to keep it as an interactive session where you are asking us question. You can let us know to go back to certain page of the presentation so that we can answer those questions exactly from there. But once we present, we'll be able to answer all your questions. We can get into interactive discussion to solve this $1 billion puzzle. So today, we are talking about one of the most exciting and probably possible opportunities in the year ahead, and that's closing the digital divide in rural and tribal Arizona. If you are in this meeting, you likely know that broadband internet is not only vital to the future of Arizona, but also immediate well-being for our communities, from education to healthcare to commerce to social service. And so many aspects of the modern life depend on a first affordable, reliable internet connection. It's sometimes amazing to think that how much infrastructure company invest in these broadband infrastructure to make it happen. Broadband infrastructure has absolutely crisscrossed our state with millions of miles of fiber, cable, wireless technology, and satellite technology. But still, there are so much more to do, especially in rural and tribal areas here in Arizona. Today, more than 177,000 households do not have any broadband connection to their home. Another 141,000 have a connection, some sort of connection, but it's not capable of modern broadband speed. Together, that's almost 15% of all Arizona households. The disparities by county is staggering from the map. In Maricopa County, 90% of the household have home internet subscription. In Apache County, it's only 43.2. In 12 federally recognized tribal nation has their own unique and significant rural connectivity challenge, broadband connectivity challenge. But we are in a new era, thanks to the Infrastructure Investment and Job Act. The Arizona Commerce Authority is set to manage well over $1 billion, nearly in dozen programs aimed to closing the digital divide. The biggest program, of course, is the $993 million Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, commonly referred as BEAD, which is Arizona's Commerce Authority is responsible for subgranting across the state to close the gap for unserved and underserved homes, residential addresses. We recently published a five-year action plan, which is milestone number 1, and milestone number 1, and it's posted on our website. This is a tremendous vision, but definitely a complex planning process and deployment process before even we reach at that point. So the big question today, how do we, as an Arizona Commerce Authority and our state government, of course, including governor's office, work with you, all the cities and city officials, to make sure that this historically big opportunity will not be missed. So with that, let's hop into the BEAD funding. Let's do a quick BEAD program overview. So going back, Arizona Commerce Authority is the entity for broadband funding expansion and deployment since 2019. So Arizona Commerce Authority coordinate the broadband development activities in partnership with the state and local government stakeholder and the private sector to streamline regulatory hurdle and maximize strategic broadband funding for Arizona. So we started the broadband initiative in 2019, and based on our so far broadband work, we went through this is our third program, the IIJ BEAD program. In 2019, we started with a $3 million grant, which funded 4 different unique middle mile projects. Last year, we went through an historic investment of $100 million through the capital funding project. We went through a program, and we selected 18 unique projects to serve in 13 counties, and that projects will provide connectivity to almost 100,000 households. That will provide high-speed internet to almost 500,000 Arizonans. And on top of that, it will deploy almost 3,300 high-speed fiber network across the state. As I mentioned, my name is Sandy Bomik, State Broadband Director here at Arizona Commerce Authority, and I have my team Broadband Program Manager, Parla Lopez, Crystal Savers, she's Broadband GIS and Data Analyst. We have our consultant, Karen Ziegler, also in this call. She is helping us with the compliance, broadband program management, the BEAD capital funding project management, as well as the compliance end of it too. Then our middle mile strategic plan, which is in partnership with Arizona Department of Transportation, where we are using the state right of way to deploy a middle mile backbone for the state. So if you go back and see our broadband feasibility study, middle mile feasibility study from 2021, you will see that 95% of Arizona population lives within 5 miles of the interstate or state highway corridor. So when in 2020, we tried to connect all the rural Arizona and underserved communities with a high-speed broadband line, we found a gap, and the gap is definitely the middle mile network. So state took that initiative to make sure where there is not a middle mile network available from a private sector, we will be spending funding to build a state-owned middle mile network. From that commitment, we developed a state-owned middle mile network on I-17, I-19. Those are construction-wise, those are done. There's a network testing going on right now. And last year, we went through a RFP process to select an organization who will be managing the state asset for next 25 years. That's an active procurement, and that organization or vendor will be managing the state-owned network. And our new initiative starts at the end of this year on I-40 East. So our next target is to build I-40, and expected finish date is 2025. Why we are talking about middle mile here? Basically, across the middle mile across I-17, I-19, and I-40 will connect at least 30% of the BEAD eligible last mile network. That includes unserved rural communities and tribes. And the elephant in the room, BEAD program. So let's take a quick look what exactly BEAD program is. So BEAD is authorized by Infrastructure Investment and Job Acts. So Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment Program will provide almost $43 billion for infrastructure planning and implementation for the 50 states and US territories. So principal objective is universal broadband access. When I say universal, that means universal. If a state has X amount of unserved and underserved location in the map, by the regulation, by the compliance from US Department of Commerce, we are liable to connect all those households with some sort of reliable broadband delivery. So the whole $993 million what Arizona received from U.S. Department of Treasury / NTIA, with this money, we have to connect three categories mostly. The first two categories are the most important one and most crucial one. The unserved location, which lack reliable internet and internet with download speed less than 25 meg and upload speed less than 3 meg and latency less than 100 milliseconds. So if you are in a community and you have less than 25 meg download speed and less than 3 meg upload speed and less than 100 millisecond latency, you are on top of the list to get the broadband grants from Arizona Commerce Authority. The underserved location, which lacked reliable internet with less than download speed of 100 Mbps and upload speed of 20 Mbps and the latency of 100 millisecond, that's the second priority. Just wanted to make sure that we are all, as per the FCC current map today, there are 177,000 households in Arizona, which is unserved, and there are 141,000 households here in Arizona, which is underserved. So these two categories compiles around 320,000-ish addresses here in Arizona, which will be served through the BEAD funding. Eligible community anchor institute includes schools, libraries, hospital, entities that facilitated greater use of high-speed internet service by vulnerable population, which has less than 1 gig symmetrical speed, will also be served through this program. That means any schools, libraries, hospitals, public safety facilities, community colleges, which has less than 1 gig service, will also be connected with 1 gig symmetrical speed during this process. Other eligible use include affordability program, cybersecurity training, workforce development, and etc. So some part of this almost close to $1 billion funding can go towards affordability program, cybersecurity training, and workforce development as well. Now, there is a common technology we all have in our mind. We definitely, fiber is the most versatile, reliable, and long-lasting technology, but we discussed into our last webinar that how fiber and the investment and density of the households, these are all connected with each other. So it will drive at the end of the day where state is going through a planning and will be creating a financial model beginning of next year, which will drive the process that which community will get fiber based on per housing passing cost, and which community will get fixed wireless licensed broadband, and which community will get a direct satellite connectivity. So fiber is definitely our preference, but it would be a mixed bag of technologies to cover all these 320 households. So in a nutshell, Arizona's BEAD program is the largest source of broadband funding effort. Priority will be given to building networks in networks that connect unserved and underserved location and the Community Anchor Institute. Program allocation currently is close to almost $993.1 million. The allocation was based on the new FCC map. Program will be implemented as a sub-grantee program to a variety of entities, including private ISPs, nonprofits, communities, cooperatives, and others. So as a city, you are also eligible to directly apply for a broadband funding. Sub-grant process will most likely start in end of 2024 or beginning of 2025. As I mentioned before, this is a lengthy program, and before even we start distributing this money, as per the NTIA and US Department of Commerce guideline, we have to fulfill certain requirements from the planning aspect to make sure that the state of Arizona is well positioned to distribute this money. Program, as I mentioned, program begins with robust and throughout planning and coordination. So let's look at the timeline. So the NOFO was released on May 13, 2022. We have received a $5 million funding from NTIA last year and started our planning process. So there are total 3 major milestones we have to hit before we start dispersing this money. One is the 5-year action plan. The next one is initial plan. And the last one is the final proposal. So 5-year action plan was due on August 2023. We submitted that 5-year action plan report to NTIA, as well as that plan is posted on ACA website. We will post a link in the chat box so that you can have a look at the plan, see what our findings are as per the guideline provided by NTIA. Now, the 5-year action plan does not require any public comment. However, we decided to create a public feedback online form. So you will be able to type your opinion in that form right underneath where the plan is posted, and you can send us your feedback. We strongly believe that this program is so massive that we definitely need help from our local government partners, stakeholder, nonprofits, and other entities who are working towards broadband and digital equity. So we would like to hear from you before and probably give that plan a refresh next year. So that's the 5-year action plan, which was published on August 22nd, 2023. The biggest and the most daunting task, which is coming in front of us, is the initial plan. The whole initial plan is divided into 2 different volumes, volume 1 and volume 2. So volume 1 basically talks about a state challenge process. And you might have a question, what is the state challenge process? So there are 2 types of challenge process we are going through right now. We actually went through last year. One, we as an eligible entity for this BEAD funding, we submitted a set of missing addresses last year to FCC from the state. So we went through a mapping process, we went through a data scrubbing and submitted almost close to 120,000 addresses. And a significant portion of that addresses were accepted, which was missing from the actual BEAD map, actual FCC broadband map. So because of that, our funding definitely increased. So our funding substantially increased because of those submission of the missing addresses. However, the challenge process we are talking about during the initial proposal is basically cities and counties, local government, ISPs, nonprofit can submit a challenge. If you are in a community which does not have, as per the FCC broadband map, it's served, but that's not the reality from your side, you can definitely submit a challenge. We'll talk more about it. And that's the part of volume 1. And another crucial significant part of volume 1 is we are required to publish a list of underserved and unserved community anchor institute. So any community anchor institute which has less than 1 gig symmetrical speed, we have to publish a list of that community anchor institute. And that includes schools, libraries, public safety facilities, local government buildings, federal buildings, county buildings, city buildings, anything probably if I missed, libraries, of course, and any other community anchor institute we normally use for community gathering. So one of the things I'll be requesting to you all, you are representing multiple cities from different side of the state. Please feel free to reach out to us. We would like to work with you to get that community anchor institute list on your side. You as a city official probably know where the community anchor institutes are in the city, so that we can retrieve the list for you, add that into our list, and publish that as part of the plan. We'll discuss more about this. So the initial plan, the volume 2, I was talking about volume 1 so far. So volume 2 actually defines the BEAD program objective, local, tribal, regional planning process, local coordination, sub-grantee selection process, eligible entity, in this case, which is ACS, implementation activities, labor standard and protection, workforce readiness, minority business enterprise, integration into BEAD funding, cost and barrier reduction, and climate assessment. So these two volumes will be published for public comment in between today and December 27th. So there will be a 1 month of public comment window period. So we will feel free to provide your comment, and we'll be engaged with you all from the city level to make sure that you are getting an advance notification that when that is getting opened up for public comment, so that you can provide your feedback. Also at the same time, I'll go back again in the Community Anchor Institute. So we will definitely need your help to pin down those Community Anchor Institute, which been long ignored because of adequate amount of funding. So now we have funding. We need to make sure those are in our database so that we can submit that to US Treasury and get funding for those. Deploy broadband connectivity for those locations. So once we submit the initial plan to NTIA this year, December 27th, it takes roughly 3 to 4 months for NTIA to approve that plan. And after that plan, up to, and the reason I use this word up to, because this is coming from NTIA, there is a high chance we can get access to up to 20% of the $1 billion. Now, it will depend on the Secretary of Commerce, like how much money we'll be receiving from that, if we are going to receive all the way 20% or less than 20%, it's not confirmed yet, but there will be some sort of funding. However, the most important phase or milestone at that time, which we'll go through, is the challenge process. Now, that's a whole different discussion. And the third webinar will completely focus on FCC broadband map and challenge process. So it's very important for us to join on the third webinar and talk about the challenge process. So I'll take the challenge process discussion on the third webinar, and that's basically your forte as a local government. So you will be contributing towards that challenge process to make sure that your community is not missing this big opportunity. So after that, once we finish the challenge process, we'll go through a financial study to make sure that we are dividing the whole state into few capital project areas where the project will be dispersed, and we'll be receiving the grant application. The final proposal is due at the end of this year. It's basically 365 days after the initial proposal was approved. So if the initial proposal was approved sometime in March, the final proposal will be due in March 2025. So after that, we'll start dispersing the $1 billion funding. So let's go to the BEAD planning stage. What's going on as we talked about the timeline? Let's take a deep dive. So the BEAD 5-year action plan, which was due for submission to NTIA in August 2023, the plan included the high-level strategies using all funding sources to achieve universal broadband access. The plan does not make any key policy decision or define a fully executable program. It's just a high-level identifying what we have here in the state and identifying the barriers. The stakeholder engagement will comprise a large part of the value and the plan development exercise. So NTI definitely seeks to foster a participatory policymaking process where all the voices can be heard. And also, while the local coordination should be an ongoing process during this whole planning phase and the deployment process, but we will be taking a phase-based approach here. That means for BEAD 5-year action plan, we send out surveys to the ISPs, identify their problem. So for BEAD initial plan, we are kicking off a community outreach tour pretty soon, and you will be hearing from us. We're basically going to every single county and we'll be hosting roundtables for local and state officials, as well as for public in a town hall setting. So we are working on a plan, and very soon you will see that plan from us, and we'll be coordinating with you to arrange the venue, arrange the event, push this notification out to the community so that we can directly participate with our stakeholder. So in the initial, as I mentioned before, the initial proposal is due in December 2023. That will include, again, 2 volumes. The volume 1 focus on defining targetable location through through the FCC broadband map, which defines the unserved, underserved, and served location, mapping the existing broadband funding here in the state. That means any other broadband funding like USDA, RDOF, Reconnect grant, or any $100 million investment we did, defining an existing broadband funding projects here in the state, defining and listing the community anchor institute, again, the most important task ahead of us, and conducting a challenge process that verifies all aspects of the eligibility map accuracy. Volume 2 defines other BEAD aspect, as I mentioned before, and the initial plan should define a fully executable broadband grant program, meaning sub-grantee selection process, how we are going to provide the universal access to all these 318,000 households here in Arizona. As I mentioned before, Arizona can get partial funding of this $1 billion in 2024. Special criteria apply to those early awards. BEAD program allow 5% of the total program fund to be spent in the administration, and may include that 5% may include the improved mapping and field validation too. The BEAD final plan, which is the last milestone and due in 2025, should report how the initial plan was implemented, should contain a complete statewide solution for universal 100 by 20 broadband access, which names the specific ISPs to ready to commit to build in return for grant fund, demonstrate the geospatial that BEAD projects can taken together with existing coverage scheduled build and will achieve universal coverage. Program fund may not be sufficient to reach in all other state, in all part of this underserved and unserved area. So we have to give NTIA a plan that what's our approach, how we are integrating different type of technologies to make sure that we are covering all the households here in the state. And final proposal should describe the compliance monitoring process and sub-grantee or sub-recipient monitoring process as well. So we went through the whole BEAD overview. Now let's talk about what's the local government consultation process. So it's one of the crucial part of the whole BEAD planning and required by U.S. Department of Commerce. We have to make local government aware about the BEAD program, objective, process, and information gathering requirement. We have to invite local inputs for action plan, 5-year action plan, initial proposal, and volume 1, including the challenge process. Distribute the action plan to the local governments. Post the initial proposal volume 1, which will define the challenge process for public comment, and invite local government to participate. In this case, for us, it would be cities and counties. Upon approval, we will launch the BEAD challenge process and activate the local government to collect data. So we want to make sure that we are communicating with you way before that, so that you are ready to submit the local government challenge process when the time opens up. Invite input from initial proposal volume 2, which will include the sub-grantee selection process and streamline deployment. Going back, just for the recap, the broadband program targets again the universal challenge process, and I will give you a very high-level overview of how the BEAD challenge process will work. We'll talk more about this into our mapping conversation on the third webinar. So BEAD program targets universal coverage. So if you have a coverage gap, that make sure that ACA Broadband Office knows about it before BEAD funds start to flow, so that office can target your underserved and unserved location. So definition as per the BEAD first priority, as we mentioned before, the unserved location that lack internet service of at least 25 by 3, the underserved location which lacks internet service less than 25 which has internet service above the unserved threshold, which is 25 by 3, but less than 100 by 20 Mbps. And the third priority is community anchor institutes, school, libraries, hospital, community center, public safety facilities, community colleges, etc., and these locations which does not have 1 gig internet service. So reliable broadband technology from our end would be fiber, cable, in some cases, DSL was actually defined by the federal guideline, but the state of Arizona will take DSL, was working with the DSL technology and determining what can be the reliable broadband delivery, and of course, fixed wireless using the licensed spectrum. The initial proposal will define the eligible location list for a sneak peek to check if your area is unserved or underserved. Please feel free to go to the broadband map. Again, we'll talk more about the broadband mapping in the next call. Ask your resident whether they have adequate service. If your area is wrongly excluded from BEAD eligibility because of inaccurate coverage claim, use the BEAD challenge process to correct that portion. So after the BEAD eligible location list is determined, the ACA will begin to make sub-grant awards to the internet service provider to determine that which companies will deploy the unserved and underserved location across Arizona. The NTIA expects the state to fund as much as possible end-to-end fiber service. However, probably the funding we got probably not going to be enough to deploy fiber everywhere. So fixed wireless using licensed spectrum is likely to fill the gaps where fiber is too expensive, or where fiber is very hard to deploy. There are households here in the state which might cost $500,000 to connect one household, $500,000. So we'll probably go with the satellite technology for those households. The state can also include the local coordination as a factor of sub-grantee selection. If you would like to ask a state, if you like the state to ask ISPs to provide the local letter of support, then use them as a factor of the sub-grantee application evaluation. Please help the state to understand what is the best way to do that. Start thinking about how you would desire to see the broadband coverage gap closed. Would you consider writing a letter of support for an ISP? Do you have a working relationship with an existing ISP already in your jurisdiction? Then feel free to let us know. So we want to hear your side, what you are doing from the broadband end in your community. So the way Arizona received a $993 million is two part of funding. So the 700, I forgot what's that amount, but $220 million exactly came for the high cost areas, meaning the areas or addresses which is very hard to connect here in the state through any kind of technology. We have given a $220 million, and then 773 came for the average expansion, broadband expansion allowable areas. So the high cost area means an unserved area, which the cost of building out broadband services is higher as compared to the average cost building out broadband services in unserved area in the United States. The factors which was included, and this was defined by NTIA, the remote location of the area, the lack of population density in the area, the unique topography of the area, the high rate of the poverty in the area, and any other factor identified by the Assistant Secretary in consulting with the Federal Communication Commission, FCC, that contributes towards the higher cost of deploying broadband in those areas. I just want to make sure one thing. This list will also be published, the high cost areas and average cost areas. If you see any of the addresses from those high cost area or your community in that list, there is the BEAD funding requires 25% matching when the ISPs are applying for this grant. The high cost areas are immune from the matching. So the state will provide 100% support for the high cost areas during a grant process. Also, recently FCC announced that the high cost addresses are eligible for $70 discount from their internet bill through the ACP program. Before it was only $30 for non-tribal addresses, and anything in tribal land it was allowed for $70. But with the new guideline coming from, or new announcement coming from FCC, any high cost address mentioned in our database or mentioned in the public list we'll be publishing can get $70 up to $70 discount from their broadband internet bill. So just wanted to get that thing out of the way. And the NTI expects state to fund, as I mentioned before, more end-to-end fiber. However, probably it won't be enough to deploy fiber everywhere. So we want to make sure we're working with you to understand your community and better fit a combination of fiber, fixed wireless, and satellite technology if needed, if the financial case does not make sense. So that's why your feedback is very important in this process. One of the responsibility definitely you as a local government has in this whole broadband deployment process is streamlining the permitting. So when the BEAD subgrantee selection process began and we start distributing this money to the ISPs, they will need suitable permit and approvals for pole attachment, accessing the public right-of-way, attaching the communication equipment to the vertical assets, crossing the railroads, and more. Also, the permitting and civil works are a major cost driver for the broadband deployment projects now. In the area where it's broadband friendly, you may feel better served by the BEAD program. So consider from the city's perspective to streamline process as much as you can. Let the broadband industry know that what you are doing to make permitting easy, reliable, and speedy. Identify the potential barrier to the deployment in your area that you cannot control and inform the ACA broadband office about that so that we can help you with that. And also at the same time, I would say this is a lengthy planning process. You will see some of the barriers we have already identified in the 5-year action plan. However, a better stakeholder engagement process between the cities and us as a broadband office will help us better understand that how we can mitigate this permitting situation, how we can get your feedback that what technology will be suitable for your community. And we're very much looking forward to work with you on that. Having said that, this is my contact. And my team will post their contact information in the chat box too. If you have any question, please feel free to reach out and set up a meeting with us. We'd be happy to help with your particular question. Having said that, we are going to open up the whole chat room for an open discussion. Please feel free to ask us any question, anything you want to know about BEAD funding or our activities right now. Or we can unmute you. You can actually basically ask us the question through this platform. Thank you so much again. Peggy, I saw that you asked a question about the presentation slide. As Crystal, my colleague Crystal already responded. So this was posted already on the ACA website, and this one will be posted as well along with the video recording of it. Elena, I saw that you asked a question about how we are assessing the Community Anchor Institute. Do you, is that okay if we unmute you so that we can make it an interactive discussion?
Now you can hear me.
Yes, I can. Sorry, I was trying to find your name from the list.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, so we've been talking about this at our coalition meetings, and we talked about it again actually this morning at our Arizona Broadband Stakeholders Network. And I'm wondering if you're looking specifically for potential anchor institutions, and then you'll have somebody who will check to see if they have the available broadband to consider it as an anchor institution, or are you just listing groups of potential anchor institutions like hospitals? I'm assuming it has to be a specific location.
Yes. So I would request my team or anyone who has the template available to post it in the chat box so that everyone can see exactly. There was a template which was provided by NTIA for us that will be following that same template. So that include the category of course, name of the organization, where it is, address, latitude and longitude, which we can derive from our site as far as we have the address, and the category. So Elena, our thought process is we actually have a Community Anchor Institute list. And we also have different stakeholder group who provided us different Community Anchor Institute list. And thank you for providing a set of list as well this morning. What we are doing, we found out that none of these lists are 100%. So what we are doing, we're taking this list and scrubbing data. Anything which is overlap, we are definitely not, we are definitely cleaning them up to make sure that there is only one address. However, any set of data which is coming from county government, state government or local government, we are taking them in and keep scrubbing the data. Once we have a data set, we are confident that, okay, and just to take a step back, we're also taking data from FEMA and American Anchor Institute data, also some data from coming from NTIA has a portal. They have some data sets laid out there too. So just to give you a quick picture, we are taking multiple data set and scrubbing them together to make sure that we are building a strong data set. And then we will use that data set and compare that against the FCC unserved and underserved location. That will identify that which location out of that Community Anchor Institute data set is unserved and does not have 1 gig symmetrical speed, and we will identify them in the list. So our ultimate target is to provide a data set or provide a Community Anchor Institute list for public comment, which has less than 1 gig symmetrical. So just I hope that answers your question, but if not, we can definitely talk more about it.
No, that does help, and I had a feeling that was what you were doing. I feel like with all the cities and towns across Arizona, you could have a massive amount of potential anchor institutions. And so I was kind of wondering if it would, like I said, if it was going to be like these individual locations or groups of, you know, I guess the more common anchor institutions. So thank you.
No, thank you. Karen, I saw your hand raised, so I unmuted you.
Thanks, Sandeep. We were actually just testing because I didn't have access to the chat, so I didn't have a question.
Okay. Karen, if you have the Community Anchor Institute template, would you be able to post it here in the chat box, please?
Yes, I'm doing that right now.
Okay, thank you. I have another question in the chat from Stephen. Stephen, do you want me to unmute you so that you can introduce yourself and probably we can discuss this question?
Hi, Sandeep. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Hey, and thanks so much to you and your team for putting this together. My name is Steve Schwerbel. I am WISPA's State Advocacy Manager. WISPA began life as the Wireless Internet Service Providers Association. We're broadband without boundaries now because of the amount of fiber that our members are deploying. But I wanted to ask, you've been talking about the role of various technologies and really appreciate your willingness to explore the ways that fixed wireless technology can work for you. Has your team, and it may be early days, totally okay if that's the answer, but has your team started thinking about the extremely high cost per location threshold and how that might allow you to use some of the cost savings of especially unlicensed fixed wireless to be able to make your broadband investments go a little bit further?
Totally. Great question, Stephen. I appreciate you asking the question. And just before that, I would little bit give you all about my background. So I graduated from Wichita State University in Kansas for my for master's and bachelor's, both in telecommunications. So I come from telecommunication background. I started working as a RF design engineer and designed network for AT&T, Verizon, fiber companies, multiple companies before I consumed this role. So the engineering aspect of and the financial planning aspect of this whole BEAD is definitely within my forte. So what we are thinking from our standpoint, the $993 million definitely will not give us a strong runway to connect all the household with fiber. So what is the threshold? So after going through the challenge process next year, we will start calculating what should be an optimum per household passing cost for here in Arizona, because the terrain is different. The city of Sedona deployment cost is not going to be equal to city of Buckeye because of the terrain. So we are definitely going to consider unlicensed fixed wireless for the extremely high cost areas where it's very hard to build even the licensed fixed wireless. And if for some reason, because of the channel, because of the MIMO issue, if the licensed fixed wireless is not being able to deliver 100 by 20, I know unlicensed fixed wireless has a different kind of ways to reach in these areas with higher speed, will definitely allow that. However, for now, during the challenge process, we are not considering most probably the unlicensed spectrum as a reliable broadband delivery. So I just want to make sure we are maximizing our areas when it comes to BEAD funding, then take a step back and think about the technology aspect of it. That's our target. And anything which is not, it's very hard to reach or impossible to reach through the unlicensed or licensed fixed wireless, we will deploy satellite there. That's our target. Does that make sense, Stephen?
Totally does. Totally does. I'll just dangle this out and maybe we could have a conversation about it. But one thing that WISPA has been considering encouraging states to do is to request a waiver to show that in extremely high cost per location threshold areas, once you've kind of determined those, to show any locations served by that unlicensed spectrum as served rather than unserved, just to take a few extra locations off your map of areas that are broadband service locations that need it, and be able to, again, continue to try to continue to make that investment go as far as possible for you.
Totally. Stephen, I would really appreciate, if we can touch base and set up another meeting and probably discuss more about it.
I'd be more than happy to. I don't want to get too far afield of the purpose of this meeting, and I appreciate you answering those questions. Thanks.
Thank you. I see a question from Alexis. So what about if we have already fiber and fast speed, can we still apply for the grant? Unfortunately, this grant is only for cities, communities, or addresses, especially in the address level, which has less than 100 by 20 or less than 25 by 3. So unfortunately, these are for broadband expansion for unserved and underserved areas, not for already where the broadband service is already available. Or if you already have one carrier who's providing high-speed broadband, your community is not eligible. So let me take a step back. I don't want to say your community is not eligible. If your city has 1,200 households, just give or take, 1,000 of them are connected with high-speed broadband, and then 200 is not connected with broadband because of the finance reason, the ISPs did not cover them, you are allowed to apply for grant funding for that 200 addresses. That's definitely allowed. However, on the existing household where you already have a broadband internet connectivity over 100 by 20, those areas are not allowed. Eric, I see a question from you. The action plan speaks to the ISP roundtable hosted by ACA Broadband Office to convene government and industry to connect. Who and what group will be invited and when will that occur? So we actually went through the phase 1 of industry roundtable, approximately 33 ISPs participated, which is providing high-speed internet service here in Arizona. We are about to kick off phase 2. Stay tuned. Our office will very soon publish a plan that how we are going to engage with the ISPs regarding the BEAD initial plan. We're taking, as I mentioned early in my presentation, that we are taking a phase or milestone-based approach. So we are continuing our conversation just based on the initial plan or 5-year action plan or what's coming on our way, like in challenge process or final plan, et cetera, et cetera. Also, just an FYI for everyone, we have a broadband contact us form on our website, the ACA Broadband website. Please feel free to fill it out with your name, email address, so that you can get the email which we are sending anytime when we need to send any information out. So it seems like we don't have any pending question. Before we conclude our session today, I would like to post two more things. You already have the broadband contact us form, so please feel free to register so that you can keep updated with our office. Also, the BEAD 5-year action plan, the first milestone of this BEAD deployment, we just posted the link in the chat box. Please have a look, provide us your feedback so that we can integrate your feedback into these plans. And also we'll be posting the FCC map. I would say a little homework for everyone would be really effective for our next meeting, because we'll be talking about the FCC broadband map and how the funding will get distributed, how you can see that if your community is eligible for BEAD funding, what's the threshold we are looking at, and how the challenge process will be worked. So all these links are posted on the website. Please feel free to let us know if you have any question. We're here to help, and we are here to make sure that your community is 100% connected when we deploy this BEAD funding. You know your community better than us. We want to make sure that we are hearing from you before we take a decision on our side. That's how the stakeholder engagement process will work from ACS standpoint. And it's also a commitment from our side, from governor's side, to connect all the unserved and underserved communities with high-speed broadband. So let's work together. Let's make it happen. Thank you so much. And you guys all have a great day.